I think I'm supposed to start now. Thank you. I had like 1 more minute left. I'm like, I'm just pull my boots up. It'll be fine. All right. So hi, I'm Amy Newell. Welcome to Let Your Body Lead, Everything Choosing with Somatics. Sorry, I did a switcheroo here. I do talk about careers in this talk, but really I'm talking about a much broader framework for making choices in your life that can be applied to careers. So who am I? I am that crazy lady who shows up to tech conferences in thigh-high boots and talks about her feelings. You can tell I'm going to talk about my feelings because I have a little barrette here that says feelings. I am also VP of Engineering at ConvertKit. We are a creative marketing platform. Yes, I am hiring, so if you like hearing about my feelings, come talk to me about the jobs I have offering. I've been a software engineer since 1999, a Rubyist since 2007. I have bipolar disorder and too many boots. Okay, why do I talk about my feelings so much? It's in part because I can't get permission from anyone else to talk about their feelings on a stage. It is not because it serves me as a girl engineering leader to talk a lot about my feelings, because it sure doesn't. It makes people think that I'm either not technical enough or not businessy enough, both of which are false. I talk about my feelings because I like to live in reality, and feelings are some of the best information we can get about our present reality. And software engineers don't always understand this. We call our bodies meat sacks. We think we are brains with bodies attached, and some of us might even think that someday we might be able to upload ourselves into the cloud and live forever. This is a profound misunderstanding of the nature of the human experience. Our bodies are not meat sacks. Everything about the way we work as people and the way we think and the way we move through the world is deeply connected to the fact that we have bodies. We're embodied, and we can't separate our consciousness from our bodies. In fact, humans are complex, open, distributed systems. We obviously are very complex. We have a lot of things going on all over our bodies that are interacting with one another. So there's not really a centralized thing. We're open because we're interacting with the world around us and responding to the people around us. We have mirror neurons, so we're all like in this larger system together. And we're obviously systems. So we're very complex. What do we know about complex distributed open systems? I'm sure most of us here have to work with such software systems every day. They're really hard to reason about. They're difficult to debug. They're constantly changing. What went right or wrong last week might tell you very little about what goes right or wrong this week or next week. And because they're open systems, we don't get to control everything that happens in them. They're always impacted by and interacting with all the other systems around them. So how do we work with such systems? We increase their observability. If we need to fix things or make changes in the system, since we can't prevent all bad things from happening, and we can't predict the impact of changes we might make in the system, and you may have information about the past, but you need information about the present. So we get better about asking questions about the present state of the system and making choices based on that present state. And then we rinse and repeat as we guide those systems as where we need them to go in the future. There's this funny word, somatics, in my talk title. It's a way to increase the observability of the complex distributed system that is our self. Here's some other definitions. the field that studies the soma, the body as perceived from within. This is Thomas Hanna. He coined the term somatics in the 1970s. And his idea was that our lived experience internally, which no one else has access to, is just as valid a source of facts as external experience, and a really important way of understanding ourselves in the world. Here's another definition. Feeling our livingness. This is Richard Strozzi-Heckler, who does coaching with somatics. I love this one because it's so intuitive, I think. It's about what it means to be alive as a human. You could also call it embodied self-awareness. What does it consist of? How do we sense the present reality? There's exteroception, and that's what's going on outside me. That's like the classic senses. There's interoception. What's going on inside me? And then there's proprioception. Where am I in the world? Where am I moving? How am I moving? I'm going to focus mostly on interoception here because it's the thing you're probably least familiar with. And I'm going to use the term interchangeably with feelings, although some aspects of interoception you might not consider to be feelings, like nausea or exhaustion. Okay, we're going to do some things to learn about interoception in action. First, we're going to imagine a coin flip. Think of a choice you have to make. Not something super hard like, should I marry this person, right? And not something easy like, what should I have for a snack? Something kind of in between, okay? And then we're gonna flip a coin, assign choices to heads or tails as one does. Okay, when I go to the next slide, you're gonna see whether it's heads or tails, and I want you to pay attention to how you feel in that moment. Y'all with me? Yes, all right, I'm seeing some nods. It's tails. When I switched to this slide, did you have a feeling about the choice the coin made for you? Yes, okay, I'm seeing some nods. I'm just gonna keep responding to nods. You had a feeling about the choice the coin made because the coin sort of concentrated and turned up the volume on your interoception into one tiny moment so that you could hear quite loudly, potentially, if you felt relief, if you felt annoyance, if you were like, no, I don't want that. So people tend to use coin flips this way, right? Like, well, maybe I don't do the thing the coin tells me, but then I have a better sense of what I want. That is interoception. The coin flip increases the observability of your soma in that moment. Okay, heartbeat. I want you to close your eyes, and we're gonna take like 5 seconds to see if we can feel our hearts beating or the blood moving through our veins in a rhythmic fashion, not with your hands, just inside, okay? We're starting now. Okay, raise your hand if you could feel your heart beating. Okay, so most of you can. Actually, a lot of the time in research studies, not everyone can. And some people will be like, obviously I can do that. And other people will be like, are you crazy? That doesn't make any sense to me at all. And that is because people have differing levels of ability to sense their internal state. So we'll talk about that again later. Okay, next, I want you to close your eyes and focus on your big right toe. If for some reason you don't have a big right toe or you can never feel it, just pick another part of your body that, that you don't usually pay that much attention to. And I want you to think about how it feels, like sense it. Is it warm? Is it cold? Is it tingly or numb? My big right toe is frequently arthritic because I'm getting to that age. Okay, this is also interoception. We like to think that feelings are the opposite of facts, but feelings are actually our best access to the facts about ourselves in the present moment. They are facts. They're not the only facts. There are a lot of other facts out there in the world. But when we're making choices for ourselves, our feelings are some of the most important facts. Our sensations and feelings drive our actions, whether we notice them or not. So if we are cold, we put on a sweater. If we're bored, we look at our phones. And in fact, if all you do is tell yourself to pay attention to something you're doing, you will act on that information. There is no sensing without moving. It's one system. It's the sensory motor system. When I asked you to even just to feel your big toe, in fact, your brain sent a lot of signals to the muscles around your big toe to get them to relax so that you could focus on feeling your big toe. So even just asking you to pay attention to something, you moved. And you can't not make changes based on observations of your current state. So this is why, even if you have no coaching whatsoever and you never read a book about it, if you are doing a skill every day and you're paying attention to how you're doing it, you're gonna get better because you can't pay attention to the thing that you're doing without adjusting to get better at it. Okay, this is another great book about somatics, Your Body is Your Brain. All these are in references, and there's a website to go to at the end. Anatomically speaking, your capacity to feel your sensations is inseparable from your ability to choose a wise course of action. In order to make good decisions, you must be able to sense your preferences. So, observability, embodied self-awareness. The better we can observe the system, the better choices we can make about how it needs to change. Weirdly, we don't have to know why we're making a choice in order to rely on our somatic intelligence to do so. In fact, research shows we know things in our bodies long before we have cognitive access to the information. I swear I'm citing an actual scientific study. I did not read this on Goop. This research you can read about in another book called The Extended Mind, also in my references. So if you put a person in front of like 4 card decks and you say you need to win, right? You need to pull the highest cards. And some of those decks are unlucky decks, they're just bad decks. The person will start they will start avoiding the bad decks without noticing it at all. It's much later in their process, if they keep on playing, that eventually they might be able to say, oh yeah, these decks are bad. But before that, if you measure their skin conductance, when they start reaching toward the bad deck, they get really stressed out. So they feel anxiety, and then they move away from the anxiety, and then that's how they start pulling from the good decks. So sometimes you don't know, your consciousness does not yet know what your body knows. Research also shows, though, that the better we can sense our internal state and name it, and at the same time see what's going on around us, bring it into our awareness, the better choices we can make. So people who are really good at responding to stressful situations, they're very highly aware of their internal state as well as what's going on the outside, and they're adjusting their internal state to meet the outside conditions at the same time that they recognize that their internal state knows some things that are useful that they don't know in their consciousness yet, right? There's a whole study also about Wall Street traders, and like the better ones have like much better interoception. So how do we get better at paying attention to what is going on inside us in the present moment? We practice. Uh-oh, I said practice. Did I just trick you into attending a mindfulness workshop? There's no more, like no breathing, no, we're done. But yes, There are a lot of ways to get better at interoception, but one of the best is this thing called the body scan meditation. And yes, it is a form of mindfulness practice. In the body scan meditation, you kind of go through your entire body, like tiny piece by tiny piece, like we did with the big toe. You'd actually probably start with the big toe. And you just bring focused attention to that part of your body and note what you're feeling. There's an example narrated by John Kabat-Zinn, again, online references, but you can also just Google body scan meditation. This next slide makes me sad, because it kind of sucks. But because of the way we work with our interoception, everything we do that limits our access to our feelings reduces our ability to choose wisely. And I say that as someone who just took an anti-anxiety med like an hour ago. So, and technically that has caused me to lose some access to my feelings. I'm not here to judge you or me for all the things we do to take the edge off and tolerate our lives. I do a lot of things that kind of reduce my access to my feelings because I have extremely large feelings because of my mental illness, and sometimes I just need to do that. Nevertheless, it is a really relevant, unpleasant fact that when we do that, we are reducing the observability of everything about ourselves and not just the thing we're trying to tolerate or avoid. So we are making poorer choices. Okay, I'm gonna talk about some things that could go wrong with your somatic intelligence and your interoception. You might not be able to feel your body. That's one thing. It could be because you just need to practice, or it could be because there's some really good reasons from your life that you really don't want to feel your body. You might not like what your body is telling you, and so that might be some stuff that you have to work through there. You might, like me, sometimes have a body or have feelings that are telling you things that don't seem to be really related to what's out there. So you might have to do some triangulation with external sources of information to figure out what's going on. Like me, you may also sometimes find that you're getting too much information from your body, and it's really hard to tolerate. Or you could find that when you're letting your body lead, it's making really dumb choices that you don't like. All of these problems are real, and I can't really address them here. A lot of them have to do with kind of the learned patterns that we have from our past and kind of the things that have happened to us, and that is therapist territory, and I am not a therapist. But a therapist who grounds their practice in any kind of mindfulness or body work could certainly help there. I do want to broaden our perspective for just a second and recognize that these things that go wrong with our interoception and our ability to sense ourselves, they're not just individual problems. Because a lot of the time, they are the result of things that have happened to us, oppression that we have experienced, challenges and trauma that we've had in our lives. So here's Richard Strozzi Heckler again. If we do not live in our bodies, then we do not have to feel the pain of internal and external oppression. Living with reality is really hard because it's full of pain and suffering and oppression. But if we can't live with the reality and really be able to feel it in the present moment, again, just like with observability of software systems, if we can't see what's going on, we cannot effectively change it. If this particular topic sounds interesting to you and you want to go more, I actually learned about somatics from this amazing book by an activist, Adrienne Marie Brown, and that's Emergent Strategy. So she talks a lot about activism and somatics and systems thinking and a sort of strategic change. It is also in the references. All right, I'm 20 minutes in. I'm now getting to how can you apply this to making career choices? Okay, so one of the things you can do at any time is kind of ask yourself not what you need to do for 5 years from now, but like what is the next thing you can do? Here's Adrienne Marie Brown saying, what is the next most elegant step you can take given all of the present state of the system? Here's Anne Lamott, who names it as the next circle of light into which I might step, which I also think is a beautiful way to think about it. Here's some really practical questions. Do you feel bored? Then what would feel interesting? If you're suffocated, how do you get some air? Are you joyless? What would be fun? I bought roller skates recently and started learning to roller skate with my children because my psychopharmacologist was like, what are you doing for fun though, Amy? Do you feel excited? If you're excited, then what is causing that and how can you get more of it in your life? If you're having trouble figuring these things out, you can use some tricks to access your feelings, coin flips, tarot cards, or other oracles if you're into that, journaling, movement, poetry, or other kinds of art. Connect with your felt sense of yearning and your felt sense of caring. Those are both feelings that you feel in your body. You yearn for something in your body. What is it that you want? You don't have to be able to answer this question in words. And just like those people who started avoiding the unlucky card decks but couldn't say why, you might not even be able to answer the question in words, but you can answer it in choices. It's not an intellectual exercise. It's an embodied experience. So you can just do what feels right. I can give a couple examples of this from my personal career journey. There was a moment, I forget what year, I was an engineering manager at the time, and I reported to the director, and they reported to the VP. And the VP was leaving, and I had a one-on-one with the director, and I said, well, are you gonna try to get promoted to VP? And he said yes. And in that moment, I had this very powerful feeling. And I said, well, I would like to be director. I didn't know before that moment that that was something I really wanted. And yet in that moment, that was the next thing. That was the next most elegant step. For my current job, right, at ConvertKit, I was not looking for a role at all at the time. I had just sent out an email with ConvertKit because I was using the product for a creative project of mine. And I received that day a recruiting email looking for a VP of engineering. And it was a Rails shop at a good size, and I liked the mission, and I just started talking to them. I thought, well, I'll have one call. And I just kept enjoying talking with them, and I kept liking what I was hearing, and now I have a job, and it's delightful. It was certainly the right choice, but there was never any moment where I made checkboxes and did pros and cons, or it was just all right, I guess this is what I want now. So if you like where you're going, even if you can't say why you decided to walk that way, your body's leading you, and it's doing a pretty good job, so congrats. Another way to put this, Mary Oliver is a poet. This is from a really lovely poem called Wild Geese. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Why do I emphasize choosing over planning? They're very different things. We make a plan with just our minds, and we choose with our bodies, and we choose with our bodies every single moment. That's the only time we can choose is in the present moment. So all the plans in the world will do nothing for you if the choices you're making with your body every day aren't in accord with those plans. You will not get where you're planning to go if you keep choosing something else. We're also really bad at predicting what we want in the future, and we're especially bad at it if we ignore the best source of information we have about how we'll feel in the future, which is how we feel right now. So if you really want to make a plan, how do you want to feel in 5 years? And what makes you feel that way now? And what are the choices that you think you can make right now that lead you think, in that direction? All right, let's wrap this up. I'm proud of my time. I think I'm doing okay. This is Richard Strozzi Heckler again. There's a certain warmth and joy that emerges as we become in touch with the somatic reality of our lived experience. Our bodies now appear as encyclopedias of information about how we are dealing with our present transition. We might not always like this information. I don't always like the things that my body is telling me. I don't want to feel the arthritis in my toe. It interferes with my dance plans. But even that is like, I have amazing access to information about what's going on inside me at any moment, and it's really incredible. Now I'm gonna read you a quote from Audre Lorde. She was an incredible activist, poet, and this is from an extremely, it's short, famous, and incredible, so you should read Poetry is Not a Luxury. Sometimes we drug ourselves with dreams of new ideas. The head will save us, right? The meat sacks don't matter. The brain alone will set us free. But there are no new ideas still waiting in the wings to save us as women, as human. There are only old and forgotten ones, new combinations, extrapolations and recognitions from within ourselves, along with the renewed courage to try them out. We don't just make plans, we make choices. We make choices with our bodies, and when we get better at listening to our bodies, we make better choices. References, careers. Thank you, thank you. I have like 3 minutes. I don't know that we're set up for questions, but someone could shout out. I will repeat it if anyone has a question. Otherwise, I can just end. Yes? How do I talk about my feelings at work? So, different ways with different people, right? But I can give you one example. I took a mental health day not long ago, and I took it because I realized I had gotten into this pretty panicked state about some things that were happening. And the panic was causing me to behave in ways that I didn't think were helpful, especially as a leader. So I posted in the engineering Slack channel, and I said, hey, y'all, I'm taking a mental health day, and here's why. It's because this is happening, and it's bad for everybody, and so I need to go and like deal with that and take myself down off of that in order to be effective as a leader, and so I don't like make things worse while I'm flailing. That's one way that I talk. Other questions? Anything else? Okay, so the question is, in one-on-ones, as a leader, how do I incorporate feeling check-ins with them? So one thing that ConvertKit actually was already doing when I arrived is that most meetings, including one-on-ones, tend to start with a red, yellow, green. So people just kind of naturally have the opportunity to say, oh my God, I'm red today, my child is sick, or, so that's one way. When there is a power differential, as there is with people who are reporting to me, I try to be very careful. It's very important that I not be dumping my feelings down on them. Like, I might share something about what's going on for me, but I'm really careful to be like, I am okay. I have a therapist. I have these other, I don't need anything from you. And I think that's a really important thing it's hard for leaders to remember, especially when you have a close team, but it's I think, very important. I think I can answer like a 10-second question. Or we could just call it, and I will stand here and answer questions after. So Let's call it. I'll be here after. Thank you so much.